Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and welcome to episode 2 of our Getting Started in Plasticity series, where we model the original, or a version of the original, USS Enterprise from Star Trek. And so, as mentioned in the first video, all the data sets are on Patreon. They're a free article, so if you want to follow along, then you can go ahead and download all that. There is a starting file for the beginning of each video. So there is a starting file for the start of the first one that just had the images. There's this file, which if you're starting from this provided file, what you'll see is basically the main portion of the design. And at the end of this episode, obviously, we'll save one that you'll have for episode 3. Remember, we are an affiliate. If you're looking to buy Plasticity, then you can use the code LEAD10 at checkout, and that'll save you 10%. And it does help out the channel. If you have any questions on Plasticity or this series or anything else, then please leave a comment. We have tons of Plasticity videos from everything from using it on scan data or modeling things for 3D printing, and a bunch of getting started and how to and what's new kind of videos. And so we update those with each version or each release of Plasticity. We don't typically cover things like the beta features, which you have access to if you have a studio license. But if you have any questions on Plasticity in general, again, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to get you an answer. All right, so for this episode, we're going to focus our attention on this main sort of thruster area. Well, we're going to omit some of the detail. We'll come back in episode 4 and do these extra little pieces and this little satellite dish. But we're going to be basically building the bridge that goes down to it and this main body. Now, when we're looking at a design like this can be done. I mean, you can pretty much choose whichever part you want to do first, whether it's this extruded part or the revolved part. It doesn't honestly really matter that much for what we're doing here. So I'm going to start with the extruded part, and then we'll move on to the revolve. And so I'm already on a right-hand view, but if you're not, make sure that you either hit 3 on your numpad or that you click on the view cube so that you're looking at the right-hand side. This is important. And the reason it's important as we get started in Plasticity is because we're always working in 3D. Whenever we're looking at a construction plane, then by default, it will be snapping to that construction plane. But there are nuanced differences. And what I mean by that is if I have a line and I start, let's say, here, and then I come down and kind of move over to here, I want you to pay close attention to the little gray box that's next to the cursor. It says YZ on it. And as I come up and I am dragging around, notice that it's starting to snap to things. And next to the cursor, it says stuff like closest or edge or end or mid. Whenever it says something other than YZ, then what's happening is you're actually snapping to geometry in 3D. On the default planes, the front, back, right, left, top, bottom, there is a persistence for it to go to those planes, but it does still have the ability for us to snap to this other geometry. Now, if we hold down Control, what we're going to get is we're going to override those snaps. That's a temporarily override those snaps. It will still place it on YZ because that's the view that we're looking at. And then I can left click to place it, and then I can come back over to this one. And so you just have to be careful when you're sketching in 3D because that first point we created started way out here in space because it snapped to that. And everything else we did stayed in YZ, but it's YZ relative to where that first point was. And so this is why it's always important to make sure that you are paying close attention to what it says next to the cursor. So I can't really use this unless I move it. And I could move it to the origin, but honestly, it's not worth it. So I'm just going to select and delete it. And then I'm going to start again. And so the way that I'm going to get around this to just make sure that it's 100% not snapping to any geometry is either hold down Control, which will remove all of those snaps or temporarily override them. You can also turn object snapping off. So over here, you can see there's object snapping, and then it won't snap to that geometry. So it's another thing you can do. Or you can just start down here somewhere and then again hold down Control so that you're not snapping to that stuff. The easiest thing, if you remember, is to turn off object snapping if you don't need to snap to the object at all. Now I'm going to drag, I'm not going to start at the very bottom. I'm going to come up into the shape a little bit. And that way I know that they overlap. And we'll come back, come up into the shape. I'm going to notice that I can't snap to that point because object snapping is off. And so I can't like use shift to get my extensions. So I need to turn object snapping on, tap shift, and then notice it says X, Y, Z. Now the little x means that it's the X projection from that left-hand point, and YZ means it's still in the YZ plane relative to my other point. So I'll left click, and then we'll snap to that point, and then we should be good. It should be exactly on that midplane. And so that's just something that you need to pay close attention to. It's very easy to get kind of out of whack in 3D. If that does happen to you, so let's say, for example, we make some shape and it's like, it's snapping over here and it's not actually working out. It's not planar, so we can't use it as an extrude, and it's not in the plane you want. You can select the entire thing. You can scale it. We can change the pivot point to the origin, so V, and let's say we'll snap it to the origin. And then we can scale in this direction down to 0. So we'll say 0 and go there. And so that will allow it to become planar again. So let's go ahead, and I don't want to keep that, so I'm going to delete it, and we're going to go ahead and extrude this. We're going to start to pull this out. I'm going to hit Tab so that it is the same distance on both sides. And then we're going to right click, and then we'll hide our curve. And so now that we've got this, we want to create a nice rounded edge on the front. If this isn't actually the right size and you want to make it bigger, you've always got the curve that you can go back to. And remember, we've also got direct modeling. And so you can pull these faces out. And if we select both sides, it'll pull them out equally. Let's say we needed to go another 10 millimeters, and we can do that and then adjust the size as well. So it's a lot easier before we start adding fillets, but it can be done multiple times. All right, so now we're going to select this edge, shift select the other edge here. And as soon as we do, it gives us this full option. We'll right click, and we'll do the same thing on the back. So hold down shift, click full, and there we go. And so now what we do with it selected, we're going to go to a Boolean operation, which is Q on the keyboard. You can find it right here. We want to select this object. It's red because right now it's trying to cut away. So in our bottom right, you see that Q is union. So we have to hit Q on the keyboard, right click, and now we should just have one solid body. So pretty straightforward, but there are just a couple of hangups that we need to watch out for. The next thing that we want to do is create this shape. And so to do that, I'm going to temporarily hide the solid body, so that way I've got a little bit of a better profile. I'm going to come to my line tool. I'm going to not worry so much about the little satellite dish. I'm going to start right here and drag this back. I'm going to come up, right click to accept, use my line tool again. And in terms of the detail here, don't worry too much about it. Just make something that has some, tapers and some edges on it. And we'll go ahead and actually, I'm going to right click there. I don't want to do anything else there. All right, so now we got that front part, the bottom, the back. We can shift select those and go to join and add them together. And now we want to just create some nice curve between here. So I'm going to do this manually. Hold down the left mouse button, go to control point, start to come out to the right. I'm going to hold down control to temporarily override snaps, and then let go of control and snap there. And so if you want to make any adjustments, you need to make sure that you've got at least the control point selection on, and then you can use your move tool and you can make adjustments to the shape. And we'll do right click to accept. Again, if you are comfortable with the shortcuts, G on the keyboard, we'll right click to accept. And then we can select our curve, shift select this one, J on the keyboard, or you can come into the tools and join. And then now select your profile and revolve it. So for the revolve, once again, we're going to use the line that we created as our axis of revolution. We'll hide our curve. And now you can see here we've got the basis of that body. And so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to hide that, and I want to make the cuts, and I want to get rid of that geometry. So I'm just going to use the spline tool, And just hold down Control so it's not snapping to anything, and just kind of make that cut there. And then we'll do the same thing again for the bottom. And we're going to use these independently, but it's a good idea because we have to remember the points we're creating. These points are not necessarily lying on the curve for this type of spline. So you may need to go back and make some adjustments. So just move things around, and we'll do the same thing over here. So Shift Select, Move, and just kind of pull those in and right click to accept. All right, so if we bring that revolve solid back and select, let's just start with this one. We'll go into our tools and select cut. We'll select the solid body and right click OK. By default, plasticity is highlighting that little piece as well as this curve, so we can just hit delete on the keyboard and get rid of them. The selection or where it actually highlights depends a little bit on your selection. So in some cases, you might find that it highlights this section. And the reason for that is because when it asked me to select the solid, I clicked on it on this side. So if we do Control Z to undo, go back to cut again, and this time I select the solid on the side that I want to remove, it's going to highlight that when I right click and OK. Typically, it's going to make me a liar now. But typically what I found is that it does select that piece. You can always manually select it and delete it though. All right, and now we need to add these together. So let's hide our image because it can be easy to forget that that's not part of our model. And then we'll select this one here, go to Boolean, select this, and again we have to manually hit Q on the keyboard and right click to accept. And so now we've got, pretty quickly, we've got some detail here that we can add to. So what I'm going to do is notice that we've got some extra lines because of the revolve. I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to Delete Redundant Topology, and that'll clean up those edges. And the reason that's important is because as we start to make things like the satellite dish on the front, we want clean edges that we can offset. And the reason for that is if we select this front face and we go to search commands and we start to type in offset, it's O on the keyboard. When we select this, this gives us the ability, this is actually much trickier to do when you have to move your cursor over here. But if you select this and you hit O on the keyboard, it's going to tie it to your cursor so that way the movement is more in scale. But basically what we want to do is we want to pull this in, left click, then right click to accept. That face is already highlighted, so all we have to do is pull it in, and we can make that little bit of a recess. You also have this white circle, which allows you to taper it. And so if you want to, you can taper that offset a bit. And that way we added some geometry relatively quickly. Now, before we move on from this part, I do want to create some fillets. So I'm going to round that corner, maybe this one, hold down Control. Let's add it here and here. And then we'll do this one as well. Just add a small fillet there. And then on the back side, I'm going to use that offset trick again. So O on the keyboard. And then just pull that face in a little bit. And then we'll do the same thing down here. And again, I know that this is not really how the model was in reality. But again, this just gives us the ability to create some visual distinction for those shapes. Now, if you wanted to, you could actually trim out and cut away a portion of this. I'm not going to go that deep into it, but if you wanted to, you could. I think this is actually like an observation deck or something back there. But again, I don't really know all the parts of the starship, but I probably should. All right, and then we're just going to round these off. Hold down Control. If you notice that based on the angle, you can see how it's a lot larger here and a lot smaller here. If you go to the chordal type, this is going to drive the width of the fillet, and that way you can get away from these basically the big differences in those fillets based on the angle between the surfaces. And so that's just something I want to do. Last thing I'm going to do up here, I'm going to use offset just like I did on the other stuff, and then just pull that in a little bit. And then on these inside curves, I'm getting a little carried away here. It's very easy to do. Hold down Control, and then just round off those other edges. And then maybe we haven't added one, let's add a chamfer here. Right click and accept. And again, what we're doing is we're just visually breaking things up. And so I think even though this video is a lot shorter than the first one, I think that's a great stopping point for us, because now you can see how much we've progressed by creating the revolve and an extrude for the top. We did an imprint and we pulled the back, we did some adjustment, right? We rotated faces, we added some fillets. We made an extrude for this middle section here. And we did a revolve for this bottom, and then we did things like offset for some of the other geometry. So this is a great place for us to stop, and that way you can take a look at the rest of the image. And actually, let's show the front, because the front gives us a better sense here. So look at the rest of the image and think about how you would make the other geometry. And so we've got some pieces that are at angles, we've got some pieces that look like they're revolves. And we need to think about, do we try to create them where they are in space, or do we make them somewhere else and move them into the right position? This is a challenge that you're going to face no matter what you're modeling, is thinking about each step of the process, where the geometry is getting created and how it's being applied, whether it's a revolve or an extrude, whether it's a pattern, whether you're offsetting geometry or edges, whether you're adding or removing from other solid geometry. There are all kinds of different ways that we can do this. The way that I approach this for this video may be completely different than how you would. And that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's just the steps that you pick and how you want to model. One of the big benefits of direct modeling here is that we're not really worried so much about doing things in a proper order. So we don't have to worry about, okay, sketch, extrude, fillet, revolve, things like that. We have the flexibility to just play with the geometry in real time. And so that's one of the reasons that plasticity is so powerful, even though the CAD geometry underneath is true CAD geometry. It's not a mesh that we're dealing with. It is very flexible in a sense that we can decide how we want to model this geometry. Now, we're not using any advanced tools that are in the studio only version. We're focusing our attention on basic tools that should be available to everybody. So if you're on the indie trial, for example, you're not going to run into any tools that are studio only for what we're doing here. But if you have any questions on this, please leave a comment and let me know. Remember, again, we are an affiliate, so lead 10 at checkout will save you 10% and will help out the channel as well. But again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in episode 3.